To start drafting my pattern, I'm going to mark 2 inches from that point all the way down. After that, I'll also mark half of an inch before I start taking my measurements. To start with my measurement, I'm going to measure from the distance between my waist to my hip, which is about 9 inches. I'm going to mark that. After marking the distance from my waist to my hip, I'm going to mark my crotch depth. To get my crotch depth, all I do is to divide my hip by 4. Once I've gotten that, I'm going to add half of an inch for ease. Once I'm done with that, I'll go ahead to mark my trouser length. Mine was 44, which I've already marked. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to mark 2 inches as folding allowance. The next thing I'm going to mark is my knee length. So I'm going to measure it from my waist to my knee. So my knee length is about 22 and a half. I'm going to mark it. On my waistline, I'm going to mark quarter of my hip measurement, and I'm going to add half of an inch to it as allowance. I'll also mark the same measurement on my crotch line. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to connect them. On my crotch line, I'm going to go in by 0.5. From the 0.5, I'm going to measure half of my thigh measurement or lap measurement. I'm going to mark it. On my waistline, I'm going to mark half of an inch, then I'll connect it to my hip line. The next thing I'm going to do is to draw a line on my crotch depth. On that line, I'll be marking 3/4 of an inch. After taking all the measurements, I'm going to connect my lines. I'm going to mark quarter of my waist measurement, add 1 inch for that intake, and I'm also going to add half of an inch for allowance. After that, I'm going to connect the 3 points together. On my crouch line, I'm going to measure it and get the midpoint, then I'll mark it. I'll also mark the same measurement on my waistline, my knee length, and my hemline to draw a straight line. The next thing I'm going to do is to divide my hip into 4. So whatever I get, I'm going to minus half of an inch. Let's say my hip is 42. I'm going to divide it by 4, which will give me 10 and a half. Then I'm going to minus 1. I'm going to minus half of an inch. That is 10. So my 10, I'm going to divide it into 2, then distribute it evenly on the line. That means 5 on that side and 5 on the other side. For the M line, I'm going to add 1 inch to the 10 I already got the other time. That makes it 11. So I'm going to divide it evenly also. That is 5 and a half on that side and 5 and a half on the other side. Then I'm going to mark it. Once I'm done with all of this, I'm going to connect my lines with a ruler. On that point, I'm going to connect it with a curve rule. Just watch how I place my curve. Once I'm done with all of this, I'll be taking in my dart intake. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to cut it out and we'll move to the back pattern. Before cutting it out, I'm going to add half of an inch sewing allowance all the way around of my pattern. For the back pattern, I've already marked out all my lines, the waistline, the hip line, the crotch depth, the knee line and the hem line. For this, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark quarter of my hip measurement. I'm going to mark it on my waistline and also my crotch line. Then I'm going to connect them together. On my crotch line, I'll also go in by half of an inch. From that point, I'm going to mark half of my lap measurement. I'm going to add 1 inch to it because it's the back. Then I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to mark the midpoint of my waistline to my crotch line. This is actually a guide, so it's not necessary. I'm going to draw a line across that point. On that point, I'm going to mark 1 3/4 inches for small size. If you're on a bigger size, you can go ahead and mark 2 inches. On that point, I'll also go in by 1 3/4 inches. I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to extend it by 1 inch upward because it's the back. After that, I'll go ahead and connect my points. The next thing I'm going to do is to get the midpoint of my waistline. I'm going to mark that. I will also mark my dart intake on that point. I made the length of the dart about 5 inches. The next thing I'm going to do is to mark quarter of my waist measurement plus 1 inch dart intake. After that, I'll go ahead and connect my points. The next thing I'm going to do is to get the midpoint of my crotch line. I'm going to mark it. I'll also mark the same measurement on my knee length and my hem line. Then I'll draw a straight line to connect them. For the back knee line, I'm going to take what I have in my front knee line and add 1 inch to it. Then I'm going to divide it by 2 and I'm going to mark it. I'll do the same to the hem line. Once I'm done marking all of my measurements, I'm going to add half of an inch sewing allowance to all my sides. After that, then we are done with our pattern. So this is what my front and back pattern looks like. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Bye.